Good day, perceptive reader. This is James Lynch. To open up this topic, I want to state God wants his people sane. God wants us to be sane. And I also want to share with you that my latest reading, which I've already done maybe about a week or so ago, was on Judges chapter 8. And yes, I will continue reading that book until its completion. And I'm taking my sweet time in a good way, you see. And I hope you are enjoying these readings. Uh, I've released the book, the January edition of Wisdom Letters, Wisdom in the Letters. And I hope you are enjoying that. Now, with that being said, you know how I mentioned it's like my dream activity of James Poetry Productions would really be between 5 in the morning all the way until 12. And I mentioned that as your normal operating business hours. And yet, in one sense, even though I may say that's 5 days a week, we know when you're really running your own business or what have you, the light bulb is always on in your mind, at least. But office hours, at least, normally run between Monday through Friday. And then you see, for the owner in itself, it's most likely Monday through Saturday. And as I joked about, even 7 days a week. All the same, there's other activities that's normally going on, not just during office hours where you may be responding to correspondence, you see, requests, emails, etc., which, I've encouraged you greatly to make your comments, etc., at the buymeacoffee.com/James Poetry. That is still open to you. Now, with that also being in mind, it is since I've started writing to put out ebooks once again. Yes, my operating hours have now gone into 2 shifts. Not that I recommend this for anybody. I'm just telling you, for me in this year of 2025, it's like, boy, I just kind of I've had to increase in double shifts from early morning to, as you can see now, the evening now, for a variety of reasons where I will, if you contact me through the Buy Me a Coffee, you wouldn't even have to wait until early tomorrow morning for me to give you a response. So keep that in mind. Now, the topic, dear perceptive reader, is this, and I don't want to make light of this topic, but it actually deals with hope. It really does deal with hope. And I'm going to give you at least references of thoughts that you can look up for yourself and see that, oh, yeah, this really is the fact of the matter. And so if you do this advice or advisement that I'm giving you, it will give you hope. It will maintain your hope because you have the facts right before you in your own research. Okay? When it comes to poets, even one very famous and in marketing and singing, in job creation, actually singer, well-known personality, had even mentioned, you see, that to be a poet, often, just like even some artists like Vincent van Gogh, who, he really did go crazy for a while, all from persons, isn't that something, looking down upon his creativity. Isn't that something? Vincent van Gogh. And now look, now that he's gone, and your normal, average, everyday person can't even buy a painting of his. See, that should tell you something right there on how people of that creative mindset really do have something good in them. But I tell you what, there's another way that the society functions as a whole that will actually try to make them think otherwise. So keep that in mind. They need hope, you see, and some of them find that hope, and then the ones who don't, sometimes they really can not only lose hope, but then they lose their sanity, which God wouldn't want them to lose their sanity, but it has happened. And so you may want to remember my own statements, which you can quote, feel free to do it, where I said again, what normally happens to honest people, and now I'm going to add in addition to that, even creative people, is that they really do have an honest assessment often of themselves, which I'm going to tell you, sometimes people think it's impossible, but it's not. It's not. An honest assessment of looking at yourself in the mirror, an honest assessment of everyday contemplating things, even on a spiritual level, that you know what, you're not totally oblivious to the different facets of your life. You just may not know how at certain times to function with certain ways of viewing matters and this and that. But it's not like, as I mentioned, you are insane with the way you view yourself. But no, you still know who you are in many ways. But as I mentioned before, what happens is you can have an honest person and a sane person just who has been in a dishonest environment for way too long. And that's why they end up losing it. That's why they end up going insane. And so I already used the example of Vincent van Gogh to give you an example of a very talented man and artist who was not looked at or looked upon as being talented. And look how it affected his mental state and outlook. And he's not the only one this happened to. This has also happened to poets, you see. This has also happened to poets. And so what, some people miss the point on is this at times. They feel like in order for persons to totally dive deep into their creativity, they have to be abused. And I say to that again, okay, you're talking about the person have to be abused, and then everybody else get to enjoy that poet's or that artist's works. And yet, I'm going to tell you where the insanity still comes in and the undeservedness of it all, to sit up there and treat this artist, to treat this poet as if they're undeserving and they're not good enough, when really all the projections of a group of people who would actually think and feel that way, I would say again, well, you know what? You don't deserve that artist, that poet's creation, because still you're just determined not to show your appreciation, like Vincent van Gogh, like what happened to him, you see. And now look at all these persons afterwards, and not all of them again still have that deep appreciation for his work, you see, but they still get to enjoy it, they get to have status with it, etc., etc. Now, this is not to harp on that, but see, I want to share with you the importance of keeping hope. See, I heard one poet, and it's not the first time I heard someone of such a deeply creative nature state, now, some persons were doing it just to pull other person's leg. But you know what? Sometimes you can recognize in listening to a person over time, and you can really see that when they go there, with expressing their thoughts about how they feel about spirituality, how they feel about the future, how they feel about God, that when they state that they don't have hope or they don't appreciate that word hope because basically of the persons that they've seen use it. In other words, as some of them would mention, you be around enough. I'm just quoting inauthentic people. It can really mess you up with the view of a certain word or even activities because of being around that type of inauthentic energy. That type of energy can really scramble your mind up, as I told you before. And yet, what I try to remind persons is this, you know, just because an inauthentic person, I would say really a sincere and reasonable person, has really, twisted and maligned the trueness of the even the source of what the good intention was. You see, try your best to still hold on to what the source and the real good intention is still of that word and why it's so important. Because I heard even one poet, as I told you before, that mentioned that they feel having hope is a dangerous word, is dangerous. Now, isn't that interesting? And yet, I told you I would argue when you look at what has happened to poets and other persons who may not have a creative nature to them, but they do have a very uplifting and wonderful personality. And then I mentioned Vincent Van Gogh as an artist. So I would argue that having no hope is really the danger. Having no hope is really the danger to that person and in some cases society. And see, and this is what I mean when I say it's a danger to that person. You can look at this as a reference. You, from many years back, I encourage you, go as far back as you can with your search, your library, or what have you, and you look at the interviews of persons who go on to live beyond 80, beyond 90, beyond 100. And what is the common denominator that they had with their personality? That no matter what, whether they said it specifically while being interviewed or not, was they had hope. They had hope. They had a good nature, even along with while they were cooking. But that's a side note. But the point is, what I want to mention is they never gave up on themselves. There were many people of faith that even while they stayed in slavery all their life, and experienced all sorts of mistreatment. It's amazing how still some of those persons who, in the mid 1900s, etc., was still in their late years of life. See, they didn't make it to that far, to that age, if they still didn't find a way to even compartmentalize certain things. See, for them to keep on having hope. And as a side note, that's one of the reasons why I mentioned, when sometimes people want to go into this, cracking a person's mind and brain in this way and that way or something like that. I told you, even the persons who want to experiment or learn in that way, they need to make sure they have a certain type of mindset to deal with such matters. Why? Because not everybody can be treated in this way or that way, if they want to call it treatments. But with their lack of experience or even empathy, that I would say sometimes, they literally can make the situation worse. And it can't be totally blamed on the person that they said was already crazy or sick. When really, no, they actually turned into the analogy of the straw being the one that broke the camel's back. But that's not what I'm going to focus on. What I'm going to focus on is this. It is the hope that people who were able and are still living beyond 80, 90, and 100 years old, more than just physical health, because some of them smoked and everything else. Isn't that so? But see, it was that mental outlook that involved the hope of a better day, the hope that they're going to wake up the next day and they're going to still do something good in the world. They're going to do something nice. They're going to treat themselves or whatever. The point is, they realize, again, even for some who don't even believe in God, even though I would tell you many of them that they interview, they are people that believe in source. They believe in God, that without that, I would argue that they wouldn't have had the hope to continue to work with their own saneness of mind throughout the years that make it beyond even 20s, 30s, 40s, and even 50s. Yeah. There's something that was continue to work with their mind and their spirit, which I would say is hope, that continue to keep them going. And so I would say, again, the ones who didn't have no hope, they didn't make it that far. Do you see what I'm saying? So as poets and creatives, you know what? Whether there's an appreciation at all for your work, this is what I will say, and I still emphasize it. Whether people appreciate your work or not, you know what? If they want to critique it, if they want to beat up on it or what have you, then you know what? They better show that they are a sane, honest individual as well, to at least pay you your wage for it. You understand what I'm saying? And that's why I told you sometimes you can just really ignore what different persons may be saying about you, when in order to tear you down, they will continue to do so many dishonest things in the process. But the whole point is, you have hope. You have hope. It's legitimate. It's not dangerous. It's actually not having hope that actually tears down the mind. Take care of yourself, perceptive reader.